Hi everyone, Allie here from The Family Meeple, and today I am back with the 6th video in my top 100 games of all time countdown for 2023. In this video, we will be looking at games 50 through 41. So we're starting out the top half of the list. If you missed any of the earlier segments, I will include a link to the introduction video in the description below. It's a great place to start. There's also a playlist on my channel if you want to check out all of the videos in this top 100 countdown. With that, we will go ahead and get started. Number 50 is a new game to the list. It was not a game that I had played in 2021 or owned at the time. This is Conspiracy Abyss Universe. Conspiracy Abyss Universe was published in 2019. It's designed by Bruno Cathala and Charles Chevalier with artwork from Pascal Quidalt and published by Bombix. Like I said, Conspiracy Abyss Universe is new to the list this year. It is a small box card game that is based on the same universe as the large box game Abyss. In Conspiracy, you will be creating a reverse pyramid of cards. On each of your turns, you are going to be adding one or more Lord cards that are square to your pyramid, which will start with a top row of 5 cards. The way that this plays is on your turn, you have the option of drawing between 1 and 3 cards from the top of the draw pile. If you draw cards from the draw pile, you will be able to place one of them into your pyramid. The other 2, up to 2, that you did not take will be added to the discard piles face up. There will be a discard pile for each of the 5 colors of Lord cards that are in the deck. And if there are already discard piles on your turn, instead of drawing from the draw deck, you can actually take all of the Lords in the discard pile of one of the colors. So potentially you could take more than one Lord on your turn if there's a discard pile that you want to take. The fun part about Abyss is that push your luck when you're drawing cards off the top of the deck, because you want to arrange the Lords in your pyramid in such a way that you create a large group of one specific color, but you also want to potentially play high-valued cards of each of the different colors of Lords, and you want to pay attention to collecting gold and silver keys so that you can claim location cards, which will give you additional bonus points and potentially additional abilities in-game. You are going to be very cognizant of how the other player is building their pyramid as well, which is really fun because a lot of games can be sort of multiplayer solitaire where you don't care what the other person is doing, but this is not one of those games. Not only do you want to pay attention to what they're collecting, but you also want to pay attention to how many Lords they have built into their pyramid already, because as soon as someone finishes out their pyramid with their 15th card, the game is going to end. And if you haven't finished yours out, that's points that you're leaving on the table. Conspiracy also has a solo mode that's created by the publisher, and it includes a small deck of cards that you print out yourself to play with. I have tried it a couple times and it is a decent solo mode, but this game definitely shines at multiplayer. It's really simple to get into. It comes in a tiny box, so it's great to take along with you, and it's one that's also available on Board Game Arena if you want to give it a try. The artwork is absolutely stunning, just like in the original Abyss game. And this is one that I'm really glad that I picked up for my collection. So that is my number 50, Conspiracy Abyss Universe. Number 49 is a game that's returning to the list from 2021. This is Dinosaur Island. Dinosaur Island originally came in at number 25 on my list in 2021, so it has dropped 24 places. But there are several new games on the list, and it'll make more sense as we continue through this countdown why Dinosaur Island has fallen. Dinosaur Island was designed by Jonathan Gilmore and Brian Lewis with artwork from Kwanchai Moria and Anthony Walken. It's published by Pandasaurus Games. Dinosaur Island is a really unique looking game. It's styled sort of around a late 80s, early 90s neon bright color scheme. And it's definitely a color scheme that turns some people off, but for me, growing up in the 80s and 90s, it gives me sort of a nostalgic feel and ties back into that 90s vibe of Jurassic Park. In Dinosaur Island, you're going to be building out your own dinosaur park over a set of rounds. In each of the rounds, the play is going to be broken out into 4 phases. In the first phase, you're going to be sending your scientists out to research dinosaur DNA recipes, collect dinosaur DNA, and other items from dice that have been rolled. Or you can also increase the storage capacity of your DNA on your player board, or you can actually save your scientists to become one of your workers in phase 3. In phase 2, the players are going to be going out and upgrading their labs or upgrading their parks with rides and concessions, or adding staff to their park as well. So you're going to be spending some money in phase 2 to increase your park and differentiate it from the other players. In phase 3, you're going to be doing worker placement on your individual lab board, and you will be able to do things like increase your park security or increase the size of the paddocks to hold your dinosaurs, breed dinosaurs using your dinosaur recipes and collected DNA, and also earning income. So things like that. Once you've used all of your workers and everyone is finished, then in phase 4, you are actually going to invite patrons to your dinosaur park to come and enjoy the attractions. If your security level is lower than your threat level for the amount of dinosaurs and the size and kind of risk of the dinosaurs in your park, then some or several of your patrons might get eaten. Once any patrons have been eaten, you will actually earn income for anyone who came to visit your park, as well as victory points based on the number of patrons that were in your park and the different rides and attractions that they visited. You'll repeat this pattern until you reach the end of the game, and at which point you will add up all of the victory points, and whoever has the most wins. Dinosaur Island can definitely look like a very heavy game, and I will say that the box, when you purchase it, tells you that it's for 8 and up players, but this is definitely not the age that I would recommend it for. It does have a lot of moving parts, and it is fairly complex. Although the phases are pretty straightforward once you get into it, they all make sense. I would say this is probably more appropriate for 11 to 12-year-olds and up. There isn't any reading, but at that point, you shouldn't be worried about that anyway. So Dinosaur Island also includes a solo mode in the box. The solo mode from the base game itself is okay. It's not great. I actually upgraded to the deluxe edition of the game plus the Totally Liquid expansion, which adds water dinosaurs and blueprints to dictate sort of how you want to arrange your park and what you want to add into your park to meet certain goals and objectives, as well as some other mini expansions. But the big thing that it added for me was a enhanced solo mode that includes an AI card-driven solo opponent where you're actually going to be competing against them, and there's a straight win-loss condition, which I like. So that is my number 49, Dinosaur Island. Number 48 is The Quest for El Dorado. The Quest for El Dorado is a game that was published in 2017. This is new to the list this year. I did not have this game in 2021 when I made that list. It is designed by Rainer Knizia with artwork from Vincent Dutrait and Franz Vohwinkel, and the publisher is Ravensburger. The Quest for El Dorado is a combination racing and deck building game. In the Quest for El Dorado, you will have a deck of cards that all have different symbols and values on them. Over the course of your turn, you will play the cards out in order to move your explorer across a modular board map that you set up at the beginning of the game. Your goal is to be the first one to reach the Golden Temple at the end and find El Dorado. You will have to move across different types of terrain, including water and forest. So you'll use green machete cards to move across the forest, and you'll use blue paddle cards to move across the water. And you have to very carefully plan out how you are going to make your trail. And depending on the cards that you have in your deck, some routes may be easier than others. There are ways to get rid of cards from your deck and shed them out completely. And then there's also ways to buy new cards. So any cards that you didn't use for movement on your turn, as well as any yellow cards that have gold, you can use to purchase cards from the market. And the nice thing about the Quest for El Dorado is the first section of the market is always going to be available. It's consistent every game. But then there's a set of cards that go above the market when you originally set it up. And if any of the original cards from the base set of cards have been taken, then the next person who wants to buy something can actually pick what they're going to bring down from the reserve card set and add for this game. So you won't necessarily have access to all of the cards in each game, and it adds a nice fun twist to it. Because the board is modular, you'll be able to set this up in a number of different ways to just vary the game up and make it a little bit different each time. There is a solo mode from BGG that I've played for the Quest for El Dorado, which is actually quite fun, and it adds in some volcanoes and different sort of objectives that you want to achieve in order to claim victory. So that's a fun one as well. This is a great one to teach to new gamers. It's very simple to get into and is a nice way to introduce the concept of deck building. So that is my number 48, The Quest for El Dorado. Coming in at number 47 is another new game to the list. This is Floriferous. Floriferous is a 2021 game that is published by Pencil First Games. It's designed by Eduardo Baroff and Steve Finn, and the artwork is from Clementine Campardu. Floriferous is a nature-themed game about collecting flowers and designing different bouquets and arrangements. In Floriferous, players are going to be selecting cards from a display in the center to add to their own personal tableau. Floriferous is an interesting game because when you are collecting these cards from the display, depending on the position of the card in the display, it will dictate the turn order for the next turn in that round. So for example, if I take a scoring objective card at the bottom of the column, then on my next turn, I will be picking last among all of the players. So this game plays over 3 rounds. In the first round, you're going to be moving across the garden from left to right. And then in the second round, you will move back across the garden from right to left. In the third round, you'll move again left to right across the garden one final time. At the end, you will look at all of the cards that you've collected and add up the points for different objective cards that you've selected during the game and the flowers that you've collected and how well they meet them. The majority of the cards that you're collecting out in the center are just going to be flower cards, and they in and of themselves have no value at the end of the game. Unless you're collecting those objective cards on the bottom row and taking a turn last in turn order every so often, you're not going to do very well in the game. There's also some public objectives at the top of the display that you'll be going for things like collecting a specific type of flower and specific types of insects on the cards that you've collected. The sooner that you can meet those objectives, the more points that you will earn. Floriferous is a game that I've had great success with introducing to new people, and it quickly becomes a favorite for them. It's one that I've also gifted and purchased for other people, and the artwork is just so beautiful. It is a very relaxing game, even though it can be a bit cutthroat. You can certainly hate draft cards away from people. You can see what they're going for since everything is public information and literally take something that primarily hurts someone else more than it helps you. Sometimes that's a good strategy though, so don't dismiss it. Floriferous also includes a solo mode in the box, which is a very simple and easy to run beat your own score mode. It includes a crow character called the Pesky Neighbor, which we also saw in Delicious from the same publisher. And what the crow is going to do is it is going to flip over an AI card and it will discard a card from the display in the column ahead of you as you're moving through the garden. So it simulates another player coming through and potentially taking a card that you wanted. It is random based on the card flip, so you never quite know what it's going to take. He will also collect the pebbles that are on the cards throughout the game, and if he collects too many pebbles and you can't counter it by discarding an equal number of pebbles, then you will actually be forced to discard cards from your tableau, which will hurt your score at the end. It's a very simple mode, like I said. It is beat your own score, but it's very relaxing if you're just looking for a game to pull out and play in an evening or on a lunch break. This is definitely one that I have had a great time with. So that is my number 47, Floriferous. Number 46 is the first of two games on my list that I do not own in my collection. Both of these games are on my wish list, and they both appear in this section of the list. The first one at 46 is Escape Plan. Escape Plan is a 2019 game. It is designed by Vital Lacerda and published by Eagle Gryphon Games, and the artwork is from Ian O'Toole. Escape Plan is a game that I played once last year at the Dice Tower Retreat, and it went right onto my wish list. I had a blast with this game, and it's one that I would definitely like to play again and potentially add to my collection in the near future. Escape Plan is a highly thematic game. It is also very complex. If anyone is familiar with Vital Lacerda games, they are heavyweight games, high complexity, and also generally highly thematic. In Escape Plan, you are playing as bank robbers who have robbed a bank and stashed the money all across the city in different locations. Your goal in the game is to traverse the city while avoiding the police, get your stash of money, and get out of the city before time runs out. I have only played this game multiplayer. Like I said, I've only actually played it once, and we played at a 5-player count, which was very intense, and it came right down to the wire. Like a lot of other Vital Lacerda games, your decisions in the game really matter, and all of the choices that you're making on every turn is going to be crucial to you being able to be successful. So the thing that I really enjoyed about Escape Plan, honestly, was the sense of tension that the game created. You really did feel the pressure of the police closing in on you and time running out and not having the money that you needed at the end in order to potentially get out of the city. In the game, you actually have 2 separate sets of money. One is in-game cash and one is end-game cash that will only count at the end if you get out. But there's a fun little push your luck element of when you get to that last day, people will start exiting the city. And every time someone exits the city, your cost to continue playing without exiting the city goes up. So every turn you take after that, you're going to have to pay your in-game cash, and then you may not have enough to actually get out of the city at the end. So it's super thematic, like I said, very high tension. It does include a solo mode, so it likely is one that I will be adding to the collection at some point in the future, and it's one that I am definitely eager to play again. So like I said, that is number 46, Escape Plan. Number 45 is the other game that I do not own in the collection. They actually ended up back to back. I'm not sure how that happened with Meeple, but it's just where they landed was 46 and 45. So 45 is 51st State, specifically the Master Set Edition. The 51st State Master Set Edition was published in 2016. It was designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek with artwork from Grzegorz Bobrowski, and it's published by Portal Games. 51st State is new to the list. It's another game that I played for the first time last year at the Dice Tower Retreat, and it is a really fun tableau building game, card tableau building game. It's one that I was taught by Z Garcia. It's one of his favorites, and I was excited to get to experience playing it with someone who really loves the game. It is a lot about resource management, planning ahead, and playing into the advantage of your particular group. So at the beginning of the game, everyone is dealt a player board that represents their group within this post-apocalyptic society. And each of the groups is better at a certain type of resource generation than others. And so the cards that you're going to be building out into your tableau will want to play into the strength of your specific player board. Your goal is to earn a specific number of victory points as fast as you can. Basically, it's a race to achieve those specific number of victory points. And then the first person who does that will trigger the end of the game. And then at the end, once everyone has played out, you will see who has the most points, and that person will be the winner. I really had a blast playing this at the Dice Tower Retreat, and it does include a solo mode, which is why it's on my wish list. I liked the tightness of the decision space, and you can see when you're playing it with someone who's very familiar with the game that there are definitely strategies that you want to plan ahead and go for, and techniques that pay off and work really well. I thought I was playing pretty well, and then Z really just streamed ahead and scored a whole bunch of points at the end. You do have to pay pretty close attention to what the other players are doing, because there is a level of player interaction on some of the cards and how the resources work. So there were things that I didn't quite plan ahead for correctly, but it left me wanting more and wanting to get back into the game. So I am hoping with the semi-recent release of the Ultimate Edition of 51st State that there will be some good secondhand copies of the master set available for sale, and I'll be able to grab one and pick it up, add it to my collection. So that is my number 45 51st State master set. Number 44 is another new game to the list. This is Verdant. Verdant is a 2022 release game. It is from Flat Out Games and AEG. It was designed by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, Aaron Messburn, Kevin Russ, and Sean Stankiewicz. The artwork is from Beth Sobel. Verdant is a game from Flat Out Games that is in their nature-themed line of games. This is also the same publisher as Cascadia, and for those familiar, they also did Calico. These are all in the same sort of trilogy of games, and they're very similar in that they are nature-themed and that they are puzzly, sort of more abstract strategy games. In Verdant, you're going to be creating a 3x5 grid of cards in front of you, and the cards are going to be played out in a checkerboard pattern where you're alternating plant cards and room cards. You'll start out with just 2 cards in front of you, 1 plant card and 1 room card. And then on your turn, you are going to draft 1 card and 1 token from the center display. The card and the token have to come from the same column. For the most part, there are ways to mitigate that, but you will select the card and the token and you will add it into your display. The cards will be added, like I said, in that checkerboard pattern as you add plant cards next to room cards or room cards next to plant cards. You will actually be adding verdancy tokens to the plants. And each of the plants will have a different verdancy value that you're trying to achieve in order to earn points for it and pot that plant. Any plants where you have not achieved the full verdancy before the end of the game, you will not score the victory points listed on the plant for those incomplete ones. You will earn some small points for the leftover verdancy, but you do want to try to complete all of the plants that you have added to your display. Once you've completed the verdancy requirement on your plant, you will be able to pot it. The pots carry extra bonus points, so the earlier that you can pot them, the more points the pots will actually be worth in and of themselves. As those dwindle down, they become less and less. The room cards you'll be adding not only will add verdancy to your plants, but they'll also score you bonus points if you can match the room color and the plant color together. So you'll score at the end the rooms for all of the matching plants that are orthogonally adjacent, so top, bottom, left, right. And if you can manage to collect a token that's the same color and place it in that room, you'll actually double the points you earn for those adjacent plants. So there's a lot of little puzzly things that you're working on when you're playing Verdant and trying to consider. There's also bonus points at the end for collecting one of each of the different types or colors of plants and one of each of the different color rooms. You can also increase the complexity a little bit by adding in bonus scoring cards that will give you points and bonuses for different types of achievements. So they're all different, and it has to do with how you place your plants, how you place your rooms, and what you've collected by the end of the game. You can also collect green thumb tokens. One of the main ways that you do this is by taking cards that other people have passed over in the display when they've been selecting cards. And the green thumbs will help you to mitigate the drafting a little bit. It allows you to wipe out the plants or the rooms and replace them, or the tokens and replace them. Or you can take a card and a token from different columns instead of being restricted to the same one. You can also use it to just straight add verdancy to one of the plants that you've already added to your display. The game plays extremely quickly. Like I said, you're only going to be building out a display of 15 cards total. So each player essentially will have 13 turns throughout the game, and then you will add up your scores. They do include a scorecard, which is helpful, so it reminds you what all you're scoring for, because it is a little bit of a point salad. The artwork is absolutely stunning. Beth Sobel is one of my favorite artists for board games. She tends to do those nature-themed games, and it's just beautiful. So Verdant was a surprise hit for me. I wasn't sure if I would like it better than Cascadia, but I did. So that is my number 44, Verdant. Number 43 is another new game to the list. This is Blackout Hong Kong, designed by Alexander Pfister. Blackout Hong Kong was published in 2018, and the publisher is Eggert Spiel. The artwork is by Chris Quilliams. Blackout Hong Kong is a hand management and resource management game that is a medium to medium heavy complexity game. It is one of the first games that I tried from Alexander Pfister and is a lot of fun. I like the dark theme and motif design of the board. The premise is that Hong Kong has been blacked out, all of the power is out, and you are attempting to go out and help people and theoretically restore the power and turn it back on. Blackout Hong Kong plays over a number of rounds, and each of the rounds is dictated by several phases. In the first phase, you will have a hand of cards, and you will add one card to each of 3, potentially throughout the game 4 locations at the bottom of your board. This is the planning phase. You'll also roll dice to dictate which resources are going to be available to collect during the round. And once everyone has played out their cards to plan their turn, then you will move to the next phase, which is going to be to actually send out your workers. So you'll flip everyone over, all the cards over that you played onto the bottom of the board in the first round or first phase, and you will do the actions of those cards. Most of the time, this is going to be collecting resources based on the dice that are available on the board. There's also some specialist cards that allow you to take other very specific actions. A lot of these will help you get money or get resources that are hard to get through just the regular resource collection. Then you will have some cards on your personal player board in your objectives section. A lot of these will just be additional cards that you're going to be able to add to your hand so that you have a larger number of workers to use in the phases throughout the rest of the game. but they will have specific requirements that you need to meet. Most of them are turning in specific combinations and quantities of the different resources. And once you've completed the objective on those workers, they will also allow you to place markers out onto the main board, which is Hong Kong. After you've completed any objectives that you can complete, you have the option to purchase additional objective cards from the display. And some of them will be additional workers that you will add that get added to your hand. And some of them will be other sort of projects that you can complete that will give you additional abilities or skills throughout the rest of the game. After you've completed any of your objective cards, then you have the opportunity to go and scout in Hong Kong. So any districts that have not been secured will have tokens on them that have different objectives that you need to meet in order to complete them. They're like little mini goals that you don't necessarily know what they are. So you will play cards that are still in your hand so that you can scout at different locations. And you have to have a specific scout value in order to successfully complete those objectives and earn the rewards. As you're collecting these tokens, they will help you throughout the rest of the game, and there's also a bit of set collection with them, so you do want to try to collect some of those scout tokens. But every time you send someone out to scout, there's the potential that they will get injured and have to be sent off to the side of your board until you can heal them later on with your medic. You will also be checking to see if any of the districts were secured during the round by yourself if you're playing solo, or with the other players if you're playing multiplayer. And if any of the districts are completely surrounded by player cubes on the board, then those districts are considered secured, and you will be able to add one of your little kind of house tokens out into that district and earn some points for doing that. Then at the end of each round, there will be a refresh phase, and depending on if you've upgraded your player board, you'll be able to refresh your hand by clearing out whichever column below your board has the most cards collected on it and adding that back into your hand. There's some really fun card play in the game where how you arrange your cards into those columns at the bottom of your player board matters. So in order to complete some of your objectives, you will have to have a location that has specific combinations of the different colored cards at one single column in order to complete that objective. So you want to be careful about when and how you clear out and refresh those cards and how you play them in the first phase. There's a lot of thinking to be done in Blackout Hong Kong, and there's a lot of intricacies that would be difficult to get completely into in a video like this, but it's one that I've definitely enjoyed. I have actually only played it solo so far. There is a solo mode in the rulebook that is kind of like a mini campaign. It will give you requirements around the number of points that you need to achieve and the specific emergency plans that you need to complete throughout the game. It's a lot of fun. It's actually very challenging, and I haven't made it all the way through the campaign because I keep losing at some of the lower levels. But it's one that I need to get back to the table soon. I haven't played it in a while, but if you want to learn more about how it plays and my thoughts on the solo mode specifically, it was included in one of my solo challenges in 2022, so you can check out those videos linked on my YouTube channel. So that is my number 43, Blackout Hong Kong. Number 42 is Noctiluca. Noctiluca is a 2019 game designed by Shem Phillips. It was published by Z-Man Games and has artwork from Brie Linzo. This game was included on my list in 2021. At that time, it came in at number 27, so it's fallen 15 places, which is not that much. Noctiluca is a absolutely stunningly beautiful abstract strategy game. In theory, it has a theme where you are collecting these little Noctiluca glowing microorganisms, I guess, from the bottom of the ocean or the sea, but in actuality, you are collecting dice off of a board. It still is such a fun game. The artwork is beautiful. It has a ton of these gorgeous, small, translucent dice that you're going to be placing out on this lovely illustrated board in the center of the table. It can be played 1 to 4 players. I have played it both solo and multiplayer, although I've played it mostly solo. It's a very quick game. So the way that it works is at the beginning of the round, you will fill the center board with dice. Depending on the number of players you will have these little yellow markers and you will split them up evenly between the players. In a solo game, you're going to take 6 for the first round and you will get the second 6 in the second round. But on your turn, you are going to take one of the markers that you have and you will set it out at a location on the edge of the board. And depending on where you set it, you'll be able to take dice from a straight line across the board. And you will select a pip value. And then depending on where you place your marker, you will take every dice along that straight line of sections that match that pip value. So if you say you want to take 4, then you'll take all of the 4s from each of the sections, no matter what the color is. And what you're trying to do is complete little jar cards that are in front of you that have these different types of Noctiluca in them. So for example, you might have a card that has 2 green, 2 purple, and 2 orange. And so your objective is to collect each of those dice and add it to your jar. All of your completed jars are going to earn you a token that's worth victory points. And then some of the jars are worth victory points in and of themselves as well, which are printed on them. The trick is that you don't want to collect dice that you can't place in one of your 2 jars that you're actively working on. Any dice that you collect that you can't place on one of your jars ends up getting passed to your opponents. And if they can place it, they get to place it in their jars. If they can't place it, they'll keep passing it around the table. In the solo game, any of the ones that you can't place actually get handed to your solo opponent and are worth a point to the solo opponent at the end of the game. So you don't want to be passing any dice. As you play through the game, the marker that you place on the board will stay there. So that particular location can't be used by you or another player again during that round. And in the solo, you will actually leave all of the markers between round 1 and 2. So you're blocking yourself off in the second round potentially for being able to take specific locations. You'll play this out until everyone has placed all of their markers, and then you will switch over to the second round. You'll clear the board off, refill it with dice that are left over, and then the ones that you cleared off the board. You'll play exactly the same way for the second round. And then at the end, any tokens that were not collected by people completing jars throughout the game will be turned over, and the tokens will become worth 1 point each. And then they get given to the person who has the majority of those jars completed. If there's a tie, then you'll split them evenly between the players. You'll add up all of your points for the tokens that are collected in front of you, for all of the points that are listed on the jars that you completed. You'll also get bonus points for every 2 Noctiluca dice that's left over on jars that you didn't complete. And each player will have a secret color of the Noctiluca that they are trying to collect throughout the game. For every matching color on your completed jars, you'll earn 1 point. Noctiluca is a really fun game. Like I said, it's beautiful on the table. It's very simple to play. I will say that the only kind of downside to it is that it can give you a little bit of analysis paralysis, or AP, because you want to carefully plan out your turns, and it does take players a little bit of time to look at the board and look at all of the different options of where they can place their markers, particularly in the first few turns where it's wide open, because you'll be looking across. If I place it here, I can come this way across to the right, or I can come straight up through the center, and which of those 2 do I want to do? And then of those 2 paths, which pip value am I going to take to best fill my jars as quickly as possible? So sometimes people will take quite a bit of time on their turn. You can, to an extent, plan out your turns ahead of time, but if another player goes where you were planning to go, or takes the dice from the section that you were planning to take them from, then you will have to rethink your turn and kind of start over from there. But like I said, this is one that I've mostly played solo, and AP in a solo game isn't a huge concern because it's typically one that I'm just playing by myself when I have free time. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to play solo, and typically a 2-player game would be about the same. It's one that I don't know that a lot of people have heard about, but it's certainly one to check out if you can get a hold of it. So that is my number 42, Noctiluca. To finish out the list today, coming in at number 41 is a game that did appear on my list in 2021. It is Copenhagen. Copenhagen is a 2019 game designed by Asger Harding Granerud and Daniel Skjold Petersen with artwork from Marcus Ehrt. It is published by Queen Games. In 2021, Copenhagen was number 14 on my list, so it has fallen 27 places since then. Copenhagen is a polyomino tile placement game where you are going to be placing the tiles in a Tetris game fashion, essentially where you're having to build them from the bottom of your board up where they're supported. Think of Tetris where you can't just float something at the top. It has to fall down and fill from the bottom up. It has a fun mechanic where you are going to be collecting cards from a central market or wharf board that's in the center. And on your turn, you will be able to either take cards from the wharf, or you will be able to turn in cards to collect a tile and place it onto your board. When you're collecting cards, you will be able to take 2 cards, and they have to be adjacent for the most part, generally speaking. And you'll be trying to collect cards of different colors depending on the tile that you want to purchase. So if you want to purchase a blue tile that has 4 squares making up the polyomino shape, then you would have to collect and subsequently turn in 4 blue cards in order to purchase that tile and add it to your board. Once you've started adding tiles to your board, you can actually decrease the cost of those. If you place the blue tile so that it actually connects with another blue tile, you'll get a slight discount when you're purchasing it with your cards from your hand. You'll also have some special action tiles that you can use on your turn, and those will allow you to either spend fewer cards or take 2 actions where you can actually take cards and spend them to build on the same turn. And there's a couple different action tiles that you'll be able to use. As you're filling in your board, you are wanting to keep in mind the columns and rows that you're creating. Some of the polyominoes will include windows on them. Well, they all have at least one. But you'll want to try to arrange these polyominoes so that you have either a column or row that has entirely all windows, because those will score more for you when you get to score them. Rows will score slightly less than columns because you are primarily building up across your board. You'll also get bonuses as you fill out rows on your board or fill out columns on your board, and your goal is to reach a certain number of points. It's a little bit of a race. And so once a player reaches a certain number of points, the game will end. It also can end if the deck of cards runs out. I believe in a 2-player game, you'll go through the deck twice. You'll play with a specific number of cards and number of times through the deck depending on your player count. So Copenhagen is a very simple game. It's one that works absolutely excellent for introducing new people to the hobby because the rule set is so simple. You only have one of 2 options on your turn, either collect cards or turn in cards to buy tiles and add them to your board. It plays really quickly. This is another one that's available on Board Game Arena, so you can play it there. And I've played it there with my mom before. It's simple enough that Rory has played it with me and enjoyed it. It's not hard to learn. It's not hard to do well at. And so it's one that I've found has really been good at welcoming people into the hobby. I really enjoy tile placement games, particularly polyomino tile placement games. I like the puzzle aspect of them. So this is one that really kind of scratches that itch for me, and it plays really quickly, like I said, and works great for people who are new or more casual gamers. So that is my number 41, Copenhagen. All right, that will do it for this section of the list. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming back and checking it out. Leave a comment below if any of these games were favorites of yours or things that maybe you didn't expect to see on the list. Do you include games on your list that you don't even own? If so, which ones are there? Until next time, please consider subscribing. Also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Have fun playing games with your family, your friends, and even solo. Bye.